Hi, so I wanted to do a video today on the different stages of a spiritual awakening. Now, this is all of my own personal experience. It's not something I've read in a book. And I'm going to be talking you through the 4 phases that I have gone through or are currently going through. So, number 1, I'm going to look at the questioning phase in my life. Number 2, the dark night of the soul. Number 3 is the rebirth stage, and number 4 is the purpose stage. So, firstly, before I say anything further, I just want to say that if your awakening doesn't look exactly like what I'm going to explain right now, please don't worry about it. We all have our own journey. We all have our own way that we awaken, and we all awaken over different time frames as well. So this is really just to give you a sense of what I've been through, and hopefully you will see some patterns in what you've either been through or what you're currently going through. The other thing to mention is that some of these phases can overlap, and you can also go through some of these phases again. So for example, some people have multiple dark night of the souls and then go on to go through another evolution of rebirth as well. So it's not all set in stone, it just happens once. It's can be an ever evolving phase that you go through. So number 1 was for me the questioning phase, and what this looked like was me starting to question all areas of my life, starting to see the patterns in the types of people that I'd attracted into my life. I was starting to see the patterns in the way that I was thinking and the cycles that I was going through. So the repeating patterns in my life. And this was really a questioning of what made me happy. How did I want my life to look like going forward? And I was also starting to get into a lot of things like positive psychology, Buddhism, manifesting, personal development. So I was doing a lot of self-work, and I was becoming more self-aware, I suppose. Now, this period of my life lasted for, I would say, around 4, maybe 5 years. So from probably my mid-30s. And I started to get more confidence at this point. I was starting to feel the fear and do it anyway, and go off and start to make some changes in my life. It was a period of time where I also started up my own business. So I was very slowly starting to build up my confidence around this time too. Now, my life at this point looked very normal. From the outside, I was in a relationship, I was building up a business. I was still in the same office job that I've been doing for many, many years. So things were really ticking along, and I was starting to self-develop. Now, when I first thought about doing this video, I was actually going to start at the dark night of the soul. But actually, when I reflected back, I realised there was a significant chunk of my life that I had gone through where I was starting to question things. And you may find, if you reflect back, you were also starting to ask questions, maybe starting to read more and dip into different types of philosophy. This was a time when things like mindfulness was very big, and manifesting as well. And I think that questioning then led on to the bigger changes in my life. So around 2019, mid-2019, I was at the very start of a separation. And I'd been with that person all my adult life, so it was a really big thing. And at that time, I thought that was the biggest thing that I was going to have to get through. But little did I know that COVID was around the corner. So in 2020 and 2021 were the biggest period of my life where everything started to fall apart, and all within a very short space of time, which then leads me into the next phase, number 2, which is the dark night of the soul. Now, I have done a separate video on this if you wanted to go and watch that, but I'll give you a very quick sort of overview of that phase. And it felt like everything was crumbling out my life. People were falling out of it, friends, relationships. My job, so the business that I built up now, I couldn't work because of COVID. And I also lost my dog at that time. I moved twice. I've no idea how I did it, but I moved twice. And that in itself is a very, very long story. But everything I essentially attached my identity to up to that point in my life. So this was sort of late 30s, around 40, when I was really going into my very deep, dark night. Everything I attached my identity to up to that stage had fallen away, or was in the process of falling away. People, places, and things, and all of that dropped out of my life. And it was a really scary time. My nervous system just froze on high alert, so I couldn't sleep. I was having a lot of physical symptoms around that time. I was learning a lot of lessons, so all the things that I was losing materially as well. I started to learn the lesson about I didn't need stuff anymore. All those years I'd worked to acquiring stuff, I realised I didn't really need much of that. And it was a time where I felt like I'd lost all hope. So all that groundwork that I felt I was doing in phase 1 and that building up, suddenly that all just fell away. And the work I'd done on my self-confidence, on starting to believe in things like manifesting, I can remember one morning just turning my back on it all and saying, you know what, I've done all this work, what I thought was work, and this is how the universe has repaid me. It's like it was literally one thing after another. And I managed so far to hit all the big life events, and then I got to the straw that broke the camel's back. And this was the start of a very long period. So to give you a time frame, I would say I was stuck in that really deep, dark night of the soul for around 3 years. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be. Some people can be in it for weeks, months, and in my case, years. So everybody's different. So please don't worry if you think you're going to be in it for that long, because it doesn't mean you are. But I went through a really dark phase of anxiety, depression, loss of hope, didn't want to go on anymore. I wasn't even sleeping, so I wasn't doing the basic functioning. And I had to have time off work. I mean, this is a very long story, but I'm trying to give you an idea of how desperate I was and how grief-stricken I was from all the loss that I'd gone through and the level of despair I was at. To the point that most nights when I was awake, because I couldn't sleep at that time, I was just like, just please take me. I can't do this anymore. I don't want to be here. This is too hard. I don't want to be on this planet anymore. And I've had enough, can't do it. So that will just give you some idea of my frame of mind at that time. I just felt like, how was I going to get through this? How was I going to get out of this deep hole and complete lack of, I felt like the universe had abandoned me. That's how I felt. I felt like I was completely alone. And remember, we were also in a time of COVID, so I couldn't mix and I couldn't go and see people. And to be fair, I wasn't really in the right state to be doing that, because that was another thing. I think anybody that goes through this period of the dark night is either going to be forced into isolation like I was, or is going to feel like that's what they need. They need to isolate off from people. And that's because there's huge amounts of healing going on. At that time, I had to do a lot of deep digging, a lot of shadow work. I had the time to really reflect and look at what I'd really brought into my life and how I was enabling some of these unequal relationships that I'd attracted, for instance. And I suppose how I'd got to where I was, even though it felt very, very unfair. And that was years of process of trying to figure all of that out, going to see different therapists and mentors. And so I did a lot of reading at that point as well. So I started to go on things like YouTube, reading spiritual books, because I was just so desperate, I suppose, to have some hope. That was what I wanted at that particular time, some hope a way of finding my own way out of this, because you realise at that point there's nobody else to do it for you. There's only you to get you out of this hole, and that is quite terrifying in itself. So it took me many, many years, a lot of suffering, a lot of healing. Physically, I was unwell. Mentally, I was unwell. Spiritually, I was unwell. So you probably see now why that took me years to get out of that stage. But I would say around 24, 25 in particular. So I'm recording this at the end of 25. I've seen the biggest leaps. And that is where I went into the third phase, which I'm going to call the rebirth and rebuilding phase. So this is where you're going to start to rebuild from the dark night of the soul. So the dark night of the soul is essentially a death. It's a death of everything that you've attached your identity to up until that point. And the rebirth is now you emerging. You may not fully know who exactly you are at this point. You can still feel quite confused in this stage, but you're now going to start rebuilding your life as the new person you're emerging into. And for me, this looked very different. So physically, and so I started dressing differently as well. I started to want to do different things, consume different things. My diet's changed. So a lot physically has changed for me, but also the way in which I make my decisions now is more heart-centered and from my heart rather than from logic and my mind. And that's quite difficult because we've been conditioned to make our decisions logically and from our minds. But I was, and still am, learning how to make decisions from what I really want at a soul level. And this means doing what I want to do, not what everybody else expects me to do. And that's quite a hard shift. But once you start rebuilding your life in that way, you're going to start rebuilding it more authentically, more soul aligned. And I suppose that's where the magic is. But it's not to say it's easy. You don't go into this rebirth stage and everything's all wonderful, love and light. There's still challenges along the way, and there's still tons of growth. And just when you think you have learned a lesson, universe will come in and say, have you though? And you feel like you're still getting lots of tests along the way. So please don't be fooled that all of a sudden everything's love and light. I mean, if you've had that experience, that's great. But I think most people, and my experience definitely was, it was a very slow climb out of the dark night of the soul and a very slow climb up to the rebuilding and rebirth stage. And I think personally that just keeps evolving and carrying on throughout your life. I don't think anybody gets to the stage where it's like, I've learnt it all, I get it, I'm just, unless you're a divine master, you don't, I think you always keep evolving and learning and going through different levels of ascension along the way. So that brings me into the fourth stage. Now, this stage, I am just starting to put dip my toe into. So I'm at the very start of this stage, which for me is more about finding your purpose and starting to live your purpose. And this will probably be in the line of being more of service to others, I would say. So a purpose and service to others. And for me, this has only really become clear this year, if I'm quite honest, and probably just within the last 6 months. And I'm still working on it. So this is all very new to me. And this channel is all about what I want to do going forward, how I want to help others, particularly those that are going through the dark night of the soul and the suffering, because when I was in that stage, I just so lacked any feelings of hope, and I just wanted to see somebody that had been through such a long, deep, painful period that I had, and I wanted to see how they had come out and emerged and gone on to have a better life, because I didn't feel that that was possible for me. So that's really what I want to help others with, because I can completely empathise with what you're going through, or if you've been through that, and where you've been, how awful it's been, and to give you some hope that you can go on to the next stage. There are different phases in this, and once you get through it, you'll realise why you had to go through it. So it's kind of, I feel like there's maybe more phases to this, but I can only give you what I've experienced so far. And this is what I want my channel to be about. I want it to be about things that I've experienced myself, so I can come on here and maybe help others, for others to see the journey as well. So everything that I tell you is from my own truth, from my own experience. So there could well be other stages down the line, but this is where I've got to now. And I think a lot of people need the help through the dark night of the soul and the rebuilding part. So I hope this helps somebody out there, and I'm going to leave you for today, and have a good day.